Provided that contraction convergence is the most robust, effective and equitable way to deal with this problem and to really ramp down our fossil fuel emissions. Tradable energy quotas, how many people have heard of them? I know we've spoken before. How many of those people would think they could explain them to their neighbours? It's harder, isn't it? I'm going to spend a little bit more time on tradable energy quotas because I think it's really important to understand the system. Tradable energy quotas, or TEX, T-E-X, just say it like that. They're a personal electronic, they're an electronic carbon allowance system, which if any of you saw Mayor Hillman's presentation, Mayor's proposing a personal carbon allowance system. Tradable energy quotas is personal, but it also includes business in the same system. Okay? What you do is you split the emissions of Britain into what's currently being used. So if you look at that divide, domestically we use 40% and in business and industry uses 60% of our current fossil fuels. So you make that split, you distribute 40% of it per capita for free to all the population. Okay? 60% you auction to business, you tender to business. As on a personal level, for that 40%, you'll only use your tax for fuel. Okay? You're only going to use it for electricity, for gas, for fossil fuels. So you won't use it for renewably generated electricity or for sustainable wood. It will only be on fossil fuel stuff. Okay? So that's another common misconception. It's not like a carbon trust system where you get labels on every individual product that you ever buy and it says 194 grams. That system is too expensive and just unworkable. You need to go up the system and just look at the primary fossil fuel energy that you're using. Okay? So if you were to go to the supermarket, the only place you would use your tax would be on the forecourt in the garage. Okay, so there'd be gas bottles there maybe and your petrol. When you went in the store, you're not using your tax in the store unless they sell coal in the store as well. But most of the products there, the cost is internalised in the product itself. So because business has to buy the tax it's using, suddenly your locally grown apple becomes much, much cheaper because that company only has to have transported it a much less distance. Non-organic apples from further afield will become much more expensive because those businesses have had to internalise the cost, they've had to buy the tax for the fertilisers that have been used for the extra transportation. So suddenly it starts affecting the price. Carbon intensive products become much more expensive and low carbon products and zero carbon products become much cheaper. The tax is also tradable. And at the start of the system you get given a year's worth. Okay, so you've always got a year's worth in supply and every week it gets topped up. So for all of us, hopefully all of us, we would be below the average, okay? Which means that we could trade and sell those tax and make money. You'd get a windfall, okay? So that means something like 65% of the population or 70% who are under the average would receive a windfall in the first year. They would be receiving money because they don't use as many taxes as they're given, therefore they could sell them on the open market. And selling them would be very, very easy. The technology behind this is already all there. It's not this huge, horrible national failure of an IT system. It's a transaction-based system that is just like bank accounts. So you can find out your balance by texting your mobile phone, texting on your mobile phone. You can call up, you can look at it on an ATM or on the internet. You'd also get bills through every 3 months maybe or something telling you where you are, what your situation is. Where are you using most of your tax? And are you above average or below average? Is it looking like in 3 or 4 years you might kind of start running low, so you might have to start buying them? And it may also, well, I'll come on to that later. So they're tradable, which means that initially the richer people, if they're consuming lots and lots, they can buy extra and continue to do some of the things they do, which is one of the reasons that some people say this is a slightly unpopular system. But that's lacking an understanding of how socially the system works as well, which I'll come on to in a second. There's also an opt-out clause. You don't have to use your tax when you buy the fuel. What you can do is tick a box somewhere or sort it online or go to a post office and tell them, I don't want to use tax. So every time I receive my weekly budget or my first year's amount, I'd like to sell those immediately on the open market and receive the money instead. And then when you go to the petrol station and you pay, you'll give them just the cash, and that petrol station will add on the price of the tax it has to buy you on the open market. Okay, so it will buy the requisite amount of tax for you to be able to still be within the system.
What's the reason you don't do that for everyone? Why do...
The reason you don't do that for everyone is to do with the social stuff, which I'll come on to later, because it's better to be within the system. If everyone was to opt out, it would in effect become a little bit more like a tax, still with the budget, but it wouldn't. It would be more expensive for people, really. If you opt out, it will over the long term be more expensive.
Is that like, I've heard it compared to like the difference between a pay-as-you-go mobile and a contract rate.
Yeah,
so most people would be cheaper to have a contract rate, but people could opt for pay-as-you-go.
But your granny or something is much more likely to want to opt out and not have to deal with it initially. Initially she's not going to understand, just wants to leave it alone. So that's possible. So it does engage everyone, but you can opt out, but you're still within that national budget, and you're stepping down that staircase over time. The other misconception is that there's an initial ration. Suddenly, a carbon allowance system, suddenly we have to cut all our energy and fossil fuel use in half, and we start there and then we go down. This system starts from where we are now, and then it moves. So what you get is a gradual descent. You've got a carbon budget over time, and it steps down over the years. We start where we are now, and we end up at zero fossil fuels in 20 years. So year by year, it's a very gradual change. Things are changing around us, our society is changing. If you took year 0 and year 20, it's a radical change. We're really going to change our entire lifestyles and the way that we generate electricity, the way we use energy, and the way we go about our daily lives. Business has to buy theirs in a tender. That system is already in place for government bonds and debts and things. The tender for that kind of system is well in place and is well understood in financial markets. Initially, some people think, well, if all the techs are sold to business, couldn't it be the potential for aviation or a big industry just to buy tons of them and price out loads of other people? In reality, that won't happen because of the way that we as a society work. So if you take an example of a vegetable box scheme, for instance, there is going to be a bigger demand for organic vegetables, there's going to be a bigger demand for local vegetables. So organic box schemes and farmers markets will be in big demand. To buy the techs for their petrol and their cars in the first few years, they will be able to pay more because there is that demand for it. Okay, so they won't be priced out. People will be changing. Less people will be flying under the system because they will know that they're going to have to use almost their entire year's worth of techs just to take a flight. And then they also know that there's a certain price of techs, and for that year they'll see that there's an extra cost for them. So it's rejigging the way that we understand how these things work. So there isn't too much of a risk of big business pricing out the smaller business. There will be a relocalization of all businesses, of a large amount of businesses, because that's where the most energy savings can be made. Government also has to live within the system as well, and that's a really, really important point to understand. Government has to buy techs for all of its own activities. So it is in a learning curve as well. The departments, if they want to do things, have to buy techs for all of their activities. The carbon budget is set by a third party, by something equivalent to the Monetary Policy Committee, by an independent body. So suddenly government becomes the facilitator of the transition. It needs to provide all the policies that will help us descend the curve smoothly. So it will start investing in cycle paths, but making it easier to walk places. It will stop expanding aviation, and it will stop its road building programs and invest in public transport because it sees the clear goals ahead, what it needs to do. And if it doesn't help us descend the staircase smoothly, then it's going to have significant ramifications for how they govern the society, because it will stop being able to work. It's going to be very clear to them what they need to do to assist the population. But most of the work is going to be done by businesses and people themselves. It's just that a lot of the barriers that are currently put in place by government will be removed, and there will be extra things as well. It's a social thing as well. If we want to, we're all in this together, and we have to plan ahead as to how we're going to change our society to become as low carbon as possible. And we're going to have to make some big changes. Voracious consumption will be seen and will become everyone's issue, because if the rich people keep flying to Tuscany every weekend to go to their villas and keep buying loads and loads of techs extra, it causes the price to rise for everyone. And I don't think it's possible to underestimate the ability of our society to look badly on that, and to try and engage with those people and encourage them and cajole them and enable them to reduce their emissions, because it is in all our interests.